Hey, this is Tom at Vintage Blues Guitars, and we're fortunate right now to have three rare and unusual vintage 12-string guitars. In fact, the three guitars that I have to show here are probably among the earliest 12 strings that you would see. The first one is a Grunewald. Grunewald manufactured in New Orleans in the late 19th century and the very early parts of the 20th century. And the guitars are very rare. We've had three of these. We've handled three, and I've probably seen in images on the internet and so on, maybe another three at that. So pretty rare guitar. I'll discuss a little bit more about it later. We also have a probably wartime World War II era Regal 12-string guitar, which is not totally unusual and rare, but what makes it unusual is the fact that it's concert size. It's only a 13-inch lower bout, which makes it a really small, relatively speaking, 12-string. And then the third example over here is made in Philadelphia by Wayman. And Waymans are pretty well known. They manufactured on par with Martin, the quality materials. And Wayman guitars aren't common, but from our research, we've only uncovered one other example of a Wayman 12-string, so an extremely rare unicorn type guitar. So let's talk about what they are and what it means in the market and for players and those interested in 12 strings. So Grunewald in the late 1800s was beginning to market guitars with the advertising claiming that you didn't have to play up the neck to get the upper notes. Instead, you could play the different courses. You could play the different strings and get the octaves. So instead of going up here to get the octave note, you could get the same effect down here. I guess you had to be a pretty adept guitar player to get your fingers to actually, select which of those G strings you're going to select, but it's doable. I mean, I've sort of played around with it. It's doable, but it takes a lot of concentration. But anyway, they were marketing that. That was marketing how companies advertise. And also they produced a 10-string. It didn't have the coarse strings in the first two strings, but the four lower strings were doubled. And they had a patent for those, and they didn't produce a whole lot of them. I mean, I've never seen a Grunewald 6-string, and I've handled three of these and seen maybe three others in images and stuff. So a pretty rare guitar. It's actually what would have been called probably standard size. I guess most people refer to this size as parlor guitar. And I guess it's not a misnomer in that sense, because I know a lot of people call 30s era little guitars parlor guitars, but the parlor era was over in the teens, 20s, 30s. Those were just catalog guitars, most of them cheaply made. But this is probably truly a catalog guitar, probably at the tail end of the parlor era. It measures less than 13 inches, about 12 inches and 3/4. I forget exactly. The top is spruce, and the back and sides looks like white oak. Oak, I don't know if you've never heard an oak or played an oak guitar, it really has a pleasing tone. The neck is cedar, which was very common in that parlor era, the late 19th century into the early 20th century. A lot of the better makers were using cedar for their necks. Tuners are a very nice grade. I don't know if you can see that in the reflection, but a very nice grade of tuners. And the bridge has a unique feature, and I've seen this in all the Grunewald instruments that we've had. They have these two little extra bridge pins. I guess they're kind of like a spare tire. I mean, you're in the middle of playing and you pop a pin, you have an extra. So I don't know what their thinking was beyond that, but it's kind of a cool little thing that sets the Grunewalds apart. Brazilian fingerboard, Brazilian overlay on the headstock, and otherwise, pretty standard stuff that you'd see on most guitars from that era. The sound produced is kind of cool. It's really hard to describe tone in words, but these typically are thinner sounding, maybe a little more choked up than what you're used to hearing, like the large Stella 12 strings, like the Grand Concert or the Jumbo 12 strings that Lead Belly played and Blind Willie played. Those are very boomy and bass-like, but these have a really nice, strong mid-range and nice chimey trebles, and it's just a fun instrument to play. It can be played, it's really good for ragtime. The guitar is actually really easy to play. It has a wide neck. It's just about all of 2 inches wide, but it is in that classic V shape from that era, but it's a thin V. And my hand, I'm kind of a large person, but I play Stella jumbo guitars, so I'm used to the large necks, but this is a really, really comfortable guitar to play, and it has very comfortable action. The neck's been reset years ago, not by us. We got it reset already, but the action's very comfortable, and it has extra light strings on it, being the fact that it actually comes from the parlor era. We strung it with 10/48s, so it's actually strung pretty lightly considering. It's got some oomph and just a really, really cool rare guitar. All right, next up, I guess we'll go in order of size. Next up is the ubiquitous Regal. Any guitar that's not identified is a Regal. This one actually is identified. It has the Regal green decal on the top that's sort of rotted away from time, but it's there. It also has the classic ladder bracing, which the Grunewald does as well, and so does the Wayman. This is a real typical, what should be called a catalog guitar. These were sold heavily through mail order and music stores, furniture stores, wherever people could make a buck selling a musical instrument. Nothing fancy about it, although it's not as cheaply as they were made. I mean, I've seen cheaper ones and I've had cheaper ones, but this one has some appointments that set it apart a little bit from the bottom of the line. First off, it has celluloid binding on the top and the back. And it's also a spruce top, birch back and sides, which again was very common for these catalog guitars, and the classic decalcomania stripe down the back. The neck is poplar. The tuners are these wartime tuners, and you can pretty much tell because the gears are riveted on. There's no screws. And again, it's about a 25 and change inch scale, and the body's 13 and a half or so. Has a different sound than the Grunewald. A little bit more nasally. It's not twangy, but it just doesn't have the bass that its bigger brethren would have. But it has a sound that has its own charm for sure. And this is also a tailpiece setup, so that does affect the sound as well. I mean, the fact that it's a birch top and a tailpiece setup would definitely change the tonal qualities of the instrument. One other thing I want to point out about these guitars is that all three of them sport a deeper than you'd expect on 6 strings, a deeper than expected lower bout. So it might be narrower than the jumbos and the grand concerts, but it has a little bit of depth for it, and that helps it give it a little bit more oomph when you play it. This neck is done in, I would call it like a soft V. It has a V shape to it, but it's mostly like a C shape, like a more modern shape. But even though it's like all of 2 inches wide at the nut, it's also very thick. It's a thick neck, not baseball bat size, but it's a thick neck. And again, it's really easy to play. It fits in my hand really nicely. And again, I'm used to playing 12 strings, and I'm used to playing a lot of vintage guitars that have thicker V-shaped necks too. Sorry about that. same song anyway. So this is a Regal, again, as a catalog type guitar. These type guitars, the concert size, did appear in some Regal catalogs in the 30s. So this example was offered in the 30s at least, and but we're saying this is probably World War II era because of the tuners. So that's the Regal. Let's go on to the third instrument. This example is probably the queen of the three. The construction quality, although the Grunewald is very well made, Wayman just seemed to work at a standard a little bit higher than a lot of makers of that era. Wayman was building in the late 19th century as well. You see catalogs from that time, and you see some of their instruments. They were fairly popular. You do see Waymans on the market from time to time, but they're not really common. But what sets this guitar apart? Number one, it's a Weymann 12-string, which it's like there's one other extant that we've seen in our research. But the beauty of it is it has a beautiful spruce top with the inlaid, what people call a rope binding, inlaid sound hole rings, and it has the inlaid back stripe. And notice that it's Brazilian rosewood. This is not a mahogany instrument. It's Brazilian, which again makes it rare. And if you think about it, where else do you see a Brazilian 12-string, pre-World War II? I mean, they basically, I wouldn't say they don't exist, but they're unicorns for sure. This guitar is probably classified as Grand Concert, maybe Grand Concert Light. It's just about 14.5. Again, it has the deeper body, and it's a fixed bridge setup. Brazilian rosewood overlay, and it's got some pretty high-end tuners on it that are original. Just an overall beautiful guitar, and again, it's really easy to play. This is a mahogany neck with an ebony fingerboard. And this neck is carved in a soft V, I'd call it probably. It's not a C, but it's not a sharp V like the Grunewald. And it's not as wide as the necks on the other two guitars, but this is just a really, again, a really, really easy guitar to play, just like the other two. One other interesting note about Weymann and the company, they often used a gold foil decal on the back of their headstocks as well as a seal number on the top. But the gold foil decal is interesting and it's telling in some ways because they used high grade on some of their better instruments. And you can see that this is a high quality piece, rare, unusual, and we're happy to have it. And hope you appreciated this, and thanks for watching, and we will be back again with more videos.